And we are back once again for the Renegade Master. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the UFC 269 pre-show. And I am joined by the two lovable rogues, Sean Sheehan and Harry Powell. And we are going to take a quick look at the UFC 269 pay-per-view card, the last pay-per-view of the year. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to remind you all about our sponsors, eatallreal.com, the best nutrition bars on the market, Irish made. Sean Sheehan doesn't know where the logo is. Get on over there to eatallreal.com and enter the code word SevereMMA. Get yourself 15% off those delicious protein bars. Lad, how are we? Last pay-per-view here, monster card. It's going to be good. I can't wait. All action this weekend in the mixed martial arts world. This is the cherry on top of the cake, if you ask me. A fantastic card from top to bottom. 2 title fights. Charles Olivier and Dustin Pourier obviously headlining, Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena as well. Lots of action to break down. Sean showcasing the Eat All Real. What is that?
The bottle. Like...
very good. Very good.
Let's see what else I have. 1 second. I have some of the bars here as well. Hold on.
Go on. I can't wait to go home. I'm going to order some so that I can bring them. When I get back home, I'm going to order some from home so I can bring them back over here to Canada and enjoy them and show them off when we're doing these pre-shows next year. Welcome to anyone who's listening. Head on. You can leave us a comment, ask us a question, disagree with us, agree with us, whatever you like in the comment section there. Don't hesitate to join up there. So let's get into it, guys. Dustin Poirier versus Charles Olivier. The champ, Stu Bronx, defends his title against Dustin Poirier. I'm looking forward to this fight. I've been thinking all week of what way I'm going to try and break it down. And, it's a tough one. I think there's still a few unanswered questions surrounding Charles Olivier. I think, Dustin Poirier is tried, true, and tested now coming into this fight. He's been fighting elite level competition. I think Oliveira has not really been fighting the same level of competition as Poirier has been recently. So I think that's going to be interesting coming into this fight. But I think the biggest talking point has been the champ's boxing. And I'm wondering what you guys think of how his boxing is going to match up with that of Dustin Poirier, who's also a really, really good boxer as well. So I'll go to Sean Sheehan first and get his thoughts on the, let's go with just the boxing aspect for now.
Do you know what? I said it on the podcast this week. I think it's a little bit like Man City versus Liverpool. I feel like, Dustin Poirier's boxing being Man City is more like tactical, technical, slow is not the wrong word, but smooth, I suppose, is the word, You can kind of see it coming and you still can't stop it at times. He's just like, I'm sure technical boxing people would like Dustin Poirier striking a lot more. Whereas Oliveira is more of like, I'm going to catch you, I'm going to attack, it's going to be hard, it's going to be fucking Mo Salah running up the ring, and there's nothing you can do about it because they're fucking attacking you with pressing hard, and there's how can you stop it? How can you defend it? So which side of that is going to win? Which side of that is going to lose? It's hard to know, like in fairness. But I think the two things to look at when you look at their boxing, right? I think Oliveira's long, but he doesn't fight a long game, if that makes sense. He fights a long attacking game because he hits you from far away, but he doesn't keep you like at the end of that jab or anything like that. He will run in and go straight at you and go forward. Dustin Poirier will try to keep you at the end of the jab at times, and he will throw combinations, but it's going to be hard against someone like Oliveira. Like, I think it's very interesting to see what Poirier does in the first 2 rounds. I'm actually not sometimes I look at fights and I'm often wrong and sometimes right, but you look at an approach and see how one fighter will actually approach it, see what they will do to broach the other guy's strengths. And I'm actually finding it very hard to see what Poirier can do in the first couple of rounds. Now, maybe what he can do is just hit Oliveira and make Oliveira feel his power, but that's a risky strategy too against someone who hits as hard as Oliveira hits. So it's a very, very intriguing matchup for me, and I'm not sure who'll win. I've gone with for Oliveira in the second round via knockout. I just think that power will be a little bit too much, maybe, and I think he will hit Pourier a lot. But yeah, I mean, I wonder what you think about that. Like,
I think that I was very impressed by Oliveira's power in the Chandler fight. Like, and I mean, power is something that you either have or you don't have. It's how you use the power is the most important thing. And I think that the champion probably has had the power all along, but maybe hadn't developed the skills to kind of translate that power into his punches. But I think he has figured that out now, which makes this a very more interesting fight for me. He like to throw a short shot like he did against Mike Chandler, like that really hurt him, and it was not too much in that shot at all. And I think he's really found his groove in the boxing, and I'm just wondering what you think, Harry. I mean, like, I think does Dustin Poirier need to be worried about Olivier in the early stages and his power especially, but on the other end, you cannot afford to start slow and give away 2 rounds in the start of a championship fight either, because you're really risking it. I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that is, Harry.
So I think that there's 2 elements to this. I think the first element is if we look at why both guys are striking, right? Oliveira, both guys started as submission artists, right? Lots of submissions on both their records. Oliveira has continued to look for submissions in his fights. Dustin Poirier has lended more towards his boxing style. So if we look at what their striking is for, the striking of Oliveira is either to make guys panic shoot and set up his submissions, or to enter his own submission game and then set up his submissions. Dustin Poirier is happy to strike for striking's sake, right? I think the really interesting thing in this is neither guy likes to fight going backwards. And something that Oliveira hasn't seen is switch hitting. And Dustin Poirier is a master at switch hitting. So I think the first 2 rounds, if I'm Dustin Poirier, I'm going to try and switch as much as possible and hit the body whilst, as Sean's already alluded to, not get clipped too much. Because the really interesting factor here is Dustin Poirier has been in wars recently. Gaethje, Alvarez, Dan Hooker, right? Serious wars. And that chin has to go at some point. And the person you don't want to be testing your chin against is Charlie Olives.
I think as well, to follow on that point, I think I mentioned about a fight recently, but it's like you're talking about switch hitting there, and I think you're right. And I like, you didn't say counter hitting, because I think if he was to get into a countering game against Oliveira, he's in trouble already. Like, I think taking the center of the cage is something that isn't maybe as important these days as it once was, because there is more defensive hitting or, fighting from a defensive stance and hitting. But I think it is for Poirier. I really do. Like, okay, he could make me look stupid. Oliveira could come forward, he could counter him and knock him out. That could happen to anyone, absolutely. And he has the ability to do that, don't get me wrong. But if this is a long fight, it goes over 3, 4, 5 rounds, I really do think he needs to take that center. And to just go off of that as well, I think if he does take the center, I think he'll win easy. Because if he wins that battle, that's the biggest battle in this fight. The battle for supremacy right in the middle of the cage, who can win that front foot battle, who can push the other guy forward, who can get that jab going and win that battle. That is the biggest battle in this fight for me. No, okay, unless it goes to the ground and it's a jiu-jitsu battle or something like that. But I actually can't see that. Do you think it could?
Yeah. It was actually the next question I was going to ask. Like, at what stage, if any, do you think we will see somebody shoot for a takedown? Another, just to maybe just sneak back on the striking part as well. I'm super interested to see like the first exchange in the pocket here. Like, Poirier kind of has a bigger frame and would probably be going into the octagon as the bigger man tomorrow night. And I'm just wondering how that power carries over. I think what Poirier has is kind of deceiving power and more of an accumulating damage that he causes on his punches, more so than this one-hit quitter. Whereas that we've seen with Dubronx lately, he does have that kind of one-hit quitter. He wobbled Mike Chandler hard. So I'm super interested to see how confident Poirier is in exchange in there in the pocket coming into that. But that brings us on to the grappling side of things. Obviously, Olivier is a fucking legend of a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Crazy amount of submissions so far in his career. At what stage, if any, do we see him trying to initiate a takedown, or maybe will he try pressure on Dustin Poirier to get him to shoot for a takedown, like Harry alluded to already, which is not going to be easy to do. I don't know, how often do you see Dustin Poirier getting taken down? And he's not too bad off his back, and he's not too bad as a jiu-jitsu player either as well. So it's really fascinating. Like, I mean, the matchup here is really fascinating, I think. But do we see this guy hit the mat at all, Harry?
I think it depends. What we touched on earlier was Charles Oliveira strikes to set up his submission game. So if we think about what Sean's just said, if Charles Oliveira has Dustin Poirier against the fence, or at least in that second quadrant of the octagon, right, and Charles Oliveira is in the middle and Charles Oliveira is dictating the reins in the space, we absolutely could see him shoot for takedowns. Right, we absolutely could see him shoot for takedowns. Open cage takedowns, I doubt it. But against the fence, grindy, ankle picking, double legging, single legging, high crotching, running to the back, those sorts of things, I think we can absolutely see that from Charles Oliveira. The likelihood of Dustin committing to a full takedown, I think, is very, very low. You might see him fake shots. You might see him put his head in the right place and maybe knee tap or something just to make Charlie Oliveira thinking. But to actually shoot in and threaten a guillotine, I highly doubt it. I really, really, really doubt it. I think Dustin Poirier's game plan here is, as Sean's already alluded to, win the inside space, win the initial footwork battle, win the space battle, dominate the distance, and have Charlie Oliver against the fence. You then touch him, you make him guess, and when somebody's against the fence, Dustin Poirier is in his absolute element, right?
Yeah.
The combination shots, the level shots are just fantastic.
100%. Like, and I'll let you just 1 sec. I think if I think about as much of the grappling we'll see from Poirier is maybe a little bit of clinching and dirty boxing up against the cage. Like, I can't see him shooting down. I think you'd be foolish to shoot down, especially in the early stages against someone like Olivier. Sorry, Sean, for cutting you in there. So
no, but I agree with everything Bodie just said there. I do think it will end up on the ground though, because Oliveira is going to be coming in there like throwing flying knees and jumping at him and going straight on, and like they'll fall down and they'll just end up on the ground. At some says you can't fight a fight like Charles Oliveira fights and not end up on the ground. Like, as Harry alluded to earlier on, as we talked about him in the I think on the podcast or previous preview, that like fighters like Oliveira have a wild game, so that if the wildness goes too wild, it'll take them into a place where they want to fight. So if he throws that flying knee, it misses, and Dustin Poirier slams him to the ground. It's in a better position for Charles Oliveira there. Like, so I think that inevitably will happen unless the fight ends early. And then it's a very interesting battle. Like, Oliveira is obviously very good on the ground, but I think if he does end up on the bottom against Poirier, it's a bit of an issue, because Poirier is very good. You know, you talk about his guillotine, if he can get a mounted guillotine or something like that, or an anaconda choke. I don't think Poirier will fear Oliveira whatsoever on the ground, to be honest. I don't think you will. I don't think it's like one of these guys who goes in there against Oliveira and is like, oh, I have to avoid his jiu-jitsu at all costs and get straight back up. I think Poirier will be happy enough to fight with him on the ground. Now, he'd rather strike with him. He'd rather win the striking battle. But I do think if it hits the ground, it won't be like this guy panicking to get back up. If there's, you know, if Oliveira falls to his back 5 times in the round and pulls Poirier down, I could see Poirier winning the 5-round decision that way. But, you know, obviously it gives Oliveira a great chance as well. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting fight all around. I have to go, lads. I'll see you.
No problem, Sean. We'll take it from here. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
I think that, like, what we seen against Conor McGregor from Dustin Poirier was, number one, a confidence in his boxing ability going up against a really, really good boxer. You can say what you like about McGregor, but his boxing credentials are fantastic. Also, we've seen a strong top game from him too, where, you know, he has no problem standing in somebody's guard and raining down punches as well. So, I mean, it's a really interesting fight. If you were to make a prediction, Harry, what would your be a prediction for the main event?
So I think if I can give sort of an in-depth prediction, I think I'm going to start by making a statement that in MMA and in a lot of ways in sport jiu-jitsu, top position is king, right? So if you're Charlie Olives, regardless of how good your jiu-jitsu is, you don't want to be on the ground for longer than on your back for longer than you have to be, right? Dustin Pourier has a black belt in jiu-jitsu and is training with guys in American Top Team that absolutely know what a submission is and how to submit from the bottom, right? So it's not like, as Sean says all the time, that at the top levels of MMA, jiu-jitsu for solely jiu-jitsu purposes is largely ineffective. And I think in a lot of ways, we may see something similar to that in this fight. I think how I see the fight going is Dustin Poirier winning the initial footwork exchanges. Dustin Poirier, in his most recent fights, has gone up against huge hitters. Justin Gaethje can crack. Dan Hooker can crack. McGregor can crack. Eddie Alvarez can crack. So it's not like he's been in there with guys that are pitter-patter punches, volume strikers. And Poirier is able to always find a way to win that inside battle and to then implement his game.
He's developed some great boxing skills and defensive skills in parrying punches, moving with the punches. And I know you kind of said earlier on that, you're being involved in those amount of wars. It's not going to pay dividends to your chin. But to be fair, we haven't really seen a blip in the radar when it comes to Poirier's chin yet. Now, I mean, that could come in an instant. Once you get hit clean, but I think we haven't really seen any proof of that yet. And I don't think that Dustin Poirier is really going to be going into this fight fearing getting knocked out. And maybe that might be lead to his downfall in the end, but that'll be yet to be seen on Saturday night. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on that fight, Harry?
I just think that the stand-up, I always try to go with the person that's more technical and the more well-rounded fighter, and I think that's Dustin Poirier. And I feel as though all the talk of Charlie Olives getting over the sort of wilting trait that he had when fights got tough, he used to look for a way out. We're really going to find out, I think, whether he has fixed that or not.
Yeah. I think I really do think so too, because he's been in there with some good competition, a good win against Kevin Lee, a good win against Tony Ferguson. But the fact of the matter is, with Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson probably weren't at the height of their games. And, these last fight with Mike Chandler's game as they come. We've seen that against Justin Gaethje. And I would put that down as a very good win for
useless
Charlie
fight
Olives.
IQ.
Yeah, brutal. He left himself wide open there. Like the openings that Charles Oliveira had against Mike Chandler are simply not going to be there. And we did see Charlie Olives get hurt in that first round as well and come back, which proved he does have a bit of heart and a bit of tenacity to come back into a fight as well. But it'll be interesting to see. I can kind of see. I kind of figured it out as we're going along here. I kind of agree with you guys. And I think that the footwork battle is going to be important, and whoever's moving on the front foot at the early stages of this fight is probably going to win. And I fancy that to be Dustin Poirier, to be honest. And I think that he'll probably get him out there in maybe round 3 or round 4 if it goes that far.
Yeah, I think round 4.
Well, that takes us on to I don't even know what that flag is.
I don't know what that is either.
The black flag. Maybe he wants us to stop. I know. We'll move on to the co-main event, which is Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena. I mean, it's not really as enticing of a fight as the main event. I don't think there's too much to break down here. I just think that, the only true battle I believe Amanda Nunes ever had at 135 was with the weighing scales, and how easily or how hard it was for her to get down to that weight. Now, she came in to this fight week in phenomenal shape, and we saw that last night at the press conference, and she weighed in perfectly. She looks in tremendous shape. She looks ready to go. There's a little bit. Do you think the little bit of shit talk that has been going on has set a little bit of a fire under Amanda Nunes? And do you think that Juliana Pena may have been the master of her own downfall in kind of creating this kind of drama around the fight and trying to get under Nunes' skin?
I think it's likely. I analysed the fight, and I don't see where Pena is going to be able to dominate Nunes enough to either grind out a 5-round decision or finish her. I think we'd need to see Amanda Nunes make a serious miscalculation and a serious lack of judgment to get, the way that Pena would finish this, she finishes it, is probably on the ground, right? I don't think there's going to be a striking exchange where Pena lands a big shot, rocks Nunes, and then follows up. Pena's not really known for that. She doesn't really have that sort of power. So I think this is an incredibly tough fight for Amanda for Amanda Nunes to lose, and I think it's an incredibly tough fight for Juliana Pena to win.
Yeah, it's, it's time and time again when we're talking about, and it seems like we're taking the easy way out, but like really and truly, you have to look at what ways can you see Juliana Pena getting the win here, and unless she catches her or there's a slip of concentration from Amanda Nunes here, I can't see anything else. Only Amanda Nunes finish here inside one round or 2 rounds. Do you think that finish may come, in your opinion, Harry, by knockout or by submission? Do you think she might try and prove a point against someone like Pena and try to get her out of there by submission?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how the fight goes, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Nunes starts to style on people a little bit more, because the competition is so lacking for her at 135. And just to bolt onto your point about her shape, like, she came in half a pound under the championship weight, right? That's not normal for Amanda Nunes, right? Like absolutely fantastic shape and absolutely fantastic dedication to her camp to get there. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see Amanda try and maybe pull her punches a little, hurt Juliana Pena, take her down and submit her. That could absolutely happen. Or maybe she just wants another highlight reel where she, stiffens her up and leaves her looking at the lights. Like, it's whatever she wants, frankly.
Yeah, I can kind of see that too. I don't think we're at a stage right now where Amanda Nunes is getting kind of overconfident or anything like that. She said she's going to take this fight seriously. She has her daughter there now for extra added motivation as well, which she probably needed as well, because it's not easy to stay and fight these challengers. And, she hasn't really had a serious test since probably Cyborg or on from that again, maybe Shevchenko or something like that. So this is some fresh blood for her on Saturday night. I expect it to go relatively easy for her, and I expect this fight to I think she might try blast her out of there inside 1 round, to be honest. I can't see it going further than 2 rounds, but I always look forward to watching Amanda Nunes fight nonetheless. So I don't think there's too much more to talk about that fight. So let's move on to Jeff Neal and Santiago Ponzinibio. This is going to be a fantastic striking battle. I think Ponzinibio also has came into this fight camp and came into this fight week in tremendous shape, also came in under as well. Jeff Neal had a little bit of trouble on Thanksgiving, but he's there, he's competing. And I expect this to be like a pretty technical stand-up battle. How do you see it going down, Harry?
So I think Jeff Neal is the technician in this fight, and I think Santiago Ponzinibio is the brawler in this fight. Ponzinibio is a guy that wades forward and tries to land huge shots. Jeff Neal is a guy that tries to pick his shots, likes his kick game. He's a long, rangy guy. And I think, I don't know whether this is just me maybe adding a bit of bias here, but I do have to question how much, if at all, the incident on Thanksgiving for Jeff Neal is going to play into this. Like, if you're just winding down your camp and then you get into some problems with the police and you're spending a night or 2 nights in jail, for you to then come out and then it's fight week and you're going to make weight.
Well, you must have been doing plenty of push-ups and pull-ups in the jail cell there.
Well,
maybe
exactly, exactly. But I do wonder how that affects your mentality, and if it affects your mentality at all. I mean, these guys are fighters; they're rock hard mentally, but I don't know. I don't know.
That can't be ideal for someone's prepreration, coming into this fight, and it'll be interesting to see how he performs when he gets in there. But I definitely agree. If he fights a smart fight here and doesn't get caught up in a brawl, because Ponzinibio is going to want to come in here and throw fire and throw those big shots. Yeah. I do think that Jeff Neal is a more technical based striker, and if he fights the right fight here, I think he gets the job done. But the big question that surrounds this fight is how good was Jeff Neal's preparations here.
I mean, it's really it's looping hooks versus straight shots in this fight, right? And if Jeff Neal can find his range, I think it's Jeff Neal's fight to lose. I think I picked Santiago Ponzinibio simply because of the incident with Jeff Neal. But I could absolutely see Jeff Neal taking a decision here.
Yeah, me too. Big time for sure. And that brings us on to the next fight, which is Kai Kara France versus Cody Garbrandt. Fight I'm really interested in talking about as well. And I think this is, I had some reservations about this fight until I seen what condition Cody Garbrandt was in this week. But I can tell you, he has come into this fight week in phenomenal shape. He looks full of energy. He looks healthy. And he looks like he's a 125er. Now, we don't want to encourage people moving down. We don't necessarily like it at times. We've kind of shit on some people who've moved down before because really it's more unhealthy for your brain to cut down even more weight, obviously, and take shots. But, if you're looking at someone who looks to have done it correctly, it looks like it's Cody Garbrandt, and it'll be interesting for me to see if that translates into the cage, if his chin holds up, if his energy holds up going into the fight as well. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on this fight and in general, Cody Garbrandt's move down to 125? Do you think he'll make a few moves down there, Harry?
So, I hate the move down to 125 simply because of the health reasons, right? I don't like weight cutting at all. But if we look at it purely from a sporting perspective, I think it's a very, very interesting move. I actually think in some ways Kai Kara France and Cody Garbrandt is a beautiful matchup. If you look at what Kai Kara France does very well, his in and out movement is really nice. He has that city kickboxing L step. He uses his kicks well. He fights combination fighting, which is, always beautiful to watch. The big problem with Kai Kara France is he's a little bit chinny, right? A little bit chinny. Cody Garbrandt, I think you're muted in.
He can kind of get caught up in kind of a brawl as well. If he gets clipped, he wants to immediately fire back. And I think that might be bad news if he tries to do that with Cody Garbrandt.
I agree. So my point on Cody Garbrandt was going to be that Cody Garbrandt is a little bit chinny as well. And Cody, they're actually very similar in a lot of ways. Both very footwork heavy fighters. Both guys with big egos. When they get clipped, they want to get that shot back immediately. We saw that with Cody and TJ. And then similarly, both a little bit chinny. Like, we're really going to see, I think, where Cody Garbrandt is in his career, right? If Kai Kara France goes in here and blasts out Cody Garbrandt, we need a big rethink on Cody and where he is in his career. If Cody goes in and looks anywhere near like the performance we saw against Dom Cruz, the 125-pound division's got an absolutely brand new contender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's like really is a crossroads for Cody Garbrandt here. I mean, Sean O'Malley alluded to it at the press conference last night that he hasn't won a fight. He's only won one fight since 2017. So, I mean, he really, really needs a win. That win for Garbrandt came against Rafael Assunção. Fantastic knockout.
The ghost of Rafael Assunção.
Absolutely too. And it'll be interesting. This is going to be a good stand-up battle. I'm wondering too, we've seen Cody Garbrandt initiate some wrestling in his last couple of fights too. Maybe he's trying to mix it up a little bit more, but we all want to see the Cody Garbrandt of old. We all want to see the Cody Garbrandt who went in there and absolutely destroyed Dominic Cruz that time. We have not seen him since that fight. And I guess we'll wait and see if we see him at 125. It's definitely, if he goes out there and takes out Kai Kara France, he puts himself right in the mix. Probably not for a title shot, but maybe a title limit. UFC will probably put him in there though. If he's a name. If he gets one or two wins, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a knockout win there against Kara France. I think that he will probably get a title shot. There's a question coming in here.
How will Cody's already? Well, that's a very good point, Carl. Yeah. That's a very, very good point. We kind of discussed that before, and I think, I don't know whether do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
No, go for it, Harry.
We're not going to know, right? We're going to find out very quickly, I think. Kai Kara France is somebody that starts quickly and that hits often. As we said, he has that lovely L step which draws fighters into that right hand. And I think this could very well be a brawl. I think it very, very well could be a brawl. And if it is, we're going to find out where both guys' chins are. But statistically speaking, fighters that are already a bit chinny at a weight, moving down 10 pounds is never a good thing.
No, and that would be my point in that question as well. Is like, historically speaking, cutting another 10 pounds of water weight will not do your chin any favors. Like, I mean, we saw TJ Dillashaw, who cut down and who was not known for being chinny. And even when he cut down, he got clipped and he got rocked as well. So, I mean, that's why I really feel in this fight that Cody Garbrandt is really going to have to try and fight an intelligent fight. He's going to have to try not to get emotional in there, and he's going to have to try not to get involved in a brawl, because once those punches start flying, and whoever clipped first is going to go down. So it's a very interesting fight. If it goes 3 rounds, this could very well be a fight of the night candidate. I'd be struggling with these two fighters. I'd struggle to see this fight going the distance. I think both these guys are going to come in and throw some fire, and one of them is going to be the unlucky ones that gets knocked out. Anything else to add on this fight before we move on to the last fight in the main card?
No, I think you've wrapped it nicely.
And as we progress on to the card opener, the main card opener, which is Sugar Sean O'Malley, who takes on Roland Pavia, who is, in my opinion, a very, very tough fight for Sean O'Malley this time. I think that he went in there and performed very well against Phillips in his last fight, did Pavia. And, Kyler Phillips was on a good win streak there. Pavia went in there, won a majority decision, was in a little bit of trouble at the start, but came back and definitely deserved to get that win in that fight. He steps in here against Sugar Sean O'Malley, who's hot property in the bantamweight division right now. How do you see this fight going? Do you think it's a right matchup for Sean O'Malley this stage in his career? And what's your thoughts maybe on O'Malley in general and where he should be in the division?
So I probably have quite an unpopular opinion. I am not on board the O'Malley hype train. I think he gets hit way too much. We saw in his fight against Eddie Wineland, right? Everyone talks about how the Eddie Wineland knockout was amazing. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was fantastic. But if you look at the sequence just before he lands the knockout, Eddie Wineland cracks him with a right hand. This is Eddie Wineland that's bearing down on his 40s and that was in the fucking WEC, right? Like, this is a guy that's been fighting for years and years and years. And Sean O'Malley is this super high prospect, this amazing striker getting clipped by, an old veteran. Like, it shouldn't be happening. I think this is the first real test in Sean O'Malley's career. I like Rolian Piver. I don't think Rolian Piver is ever going to be fighting for a title or anything like that. But he's a guy that knows how to fight. He's very, very durable, right? And we saw in the fight against Chris Moutinho, Sean Sugar O'Malley didn't like it when Chris Moutinho wouldn't go away.
No, we talked about that too. We have talked. Me and you have talked about it, and me and Sean talked about it on the Contender on Patreon as well. Whereas that I found in that Moutinho fight that Sugar Sean O'Malley, while he wasn't out of his depth moving backwards, but you could tell that he does not enjoy moving on the back foot. He doesn't feel as comfortable as he does moving forward. And I think that that's a blueprint to go and fight him. And you put yourself, and that's why he's being matched up with Pavia here, because Pavia is that type of fighter. He's going to get in your fucking face. He's going to not make things easy. And we've seen it time and time again with O'Malley. When his back is against the wall, he doesn't like it. O'Malley is the type of guy that likes to be the hammer, but does not enjoy being the nail. And unfortunately in MMA, you have to be fucking both at times, Yep. So for me, it's interesting. It is a great fight for Sean O'Malley to prove to himself and to prove to all of us that he does have a little bit of durability. And it's up to him to kind of prove to us that he is ready for the next step. He's going in there against a guy who has 23 fights. He's only 26 years of age. Very, very experienced guy. A guy that's not going to be afraid to go in there and put it to Sean O'Malley either. And that's why I love this fight. Pavia may be unranked. He may not be well known by everyone, but I'm very excited to see this fight, and I don't see this being an easy fight for Sean O'Malley at all. And this could very well go to the judges' scorecards and be scored either way here. And if Sean O'Malley goes out there and proves me wrong and proves you wrong, Harry, fair fucking play to him. He's ready for the next step then. Let's give him some top 15 opponents.
So I'm going to add two more points. The first point is a lot of the footage that's come out of Sean O'Malley's camp is him wrestling. Don't be surprised if we see some shots here. Don't be surprised whatsoever if we see some shots here. If nothing more than to mix up the takedowns. I think one thing, if I could be critical of Sean O'Malley's overall game, is that it's not varied enough, right? He's clearly a very creative striker on the front foot. Very, very clearly clinical in his shot selection. But I think, and defensively in his grappling.
And that wouldn't necessarily be O'Malley's fault either, because I do believe he's been matched up with guys that want, like, that the UFC probably want to stand and bang with him. So
absolutely.
I think that Pavia will come in here and look to strike and look to grapple. So I'd be very hopeful that we will see more of the overall game of O'Malley.
I agree. The last point is actually a question to you, and that question is, Raleigh Paiva has some solid leg kicks. How do you see that playing and affecting this fight?
Well, it all depends how Sean O'Malley deals with him this time, because if you've seen what happened in the Vera fight, you want to be going in there and kicking the shit out of O'Malley's legs and see if he has. Like, I mean, you got to condition those legs, man. They're long, they're skinny, and they're a target. You know what I mean? Especially how Sean O'Malley kind of styles his striking, where he does stick that lead leg out, and it is there for the taking as well. And then we've seen it time and time again with the introduction of calf kicks as well. You just cannot fucking keep your leg out there and cannot stay eating those shots, I think. And it'll be interesting to see whether Sean O'Malley counters them, whether he checks them, or whether he eats them and just stays moving forward. I mean, it's definitely something that Pavia needs to bring into this fight. Sugar Sean O'Malley has shown weakness in that department before, so why wouldn't you go in there and throw some leg kicks?
I agree. I agree.
All right, that brings us on to the prelim section of the card, which is quite decent as well. I mean, this card is phenomenal. The last pay-per-view card of the year, they're really, really treating us. And, we move on to the prelims headliner, which is Josh Emmett as he returns to face Dan Ige in a fantastic featherweight fight. I mean, Josh Emmett, he went in there. We've not seen him since midway through 2020, where he went in there against Shane Burgess and blew out his knee and broke his hand, or maybe broke his two hands, and fought all 5 rounds and just proved that he is an absolute savage in there, is Josh Emmett. A guy that I love watching fighting every time, a guy who always brings it, a guy that if he clips you, he'll knock you fucking dead, and that's nothing but excitement when he's in the cage. Now, he has Dan Ige in front of him, who is also a very, very good fighter, who has been on a really, really good run. Obviously, his last couple of fights, he's only won 1 in his last 3, but those 2 losses came to Calvin Kattar and they came to the Korean Zombie as well. This is his chance to prove that he can go in there with someone like Josh Emmett and get a win, and I think this is a really, really well-matched fight. How would you see it going down, Harry?
I actually think it's a bit of a rough fight for Josh Emmett, given that he fought Jeremy Stephens and broke half of his face and needed major surgery to fix that.
Yeah.
He comes back into a main event with Shane Burgos and breaks half of his body again and is out again with like multiple major surgeries. If I was Josh Emmett, I wouldn't have minded a slight backstep, just a tiny backstep.
Yeah.
Dan Ige is a savage. Dan Ige is hella durable, doesn't stop moving forward. He can grapple, he can strike. There's a bit of everything. I feel on Josh Emmett's night, Josh Emmett is a level above Dan Ige. Josh Emmett has his own fantastic grappling, and he hits really, really hard. So on the night, we're going to see, I think in terms of a litmus test, it's a good litmus test to find out where Josh Emmett actually is, right?
Definitely is, yeah.
Is he still super high level? If he is, we're going to find out. Excuse me, sorry. If we're going to find out. And if he's not, well, we're going to find out.
Exactly. I do agree. It is a tough fight to come back after a long injury layoff. Credit to Josh Emmett for taking it. And I think, the defining factor in this fight is pretty much the defining factor in all Josh Emmett fights, if you ask me, and that's the power that he carries. And, Dan Ige can be winning the striking exchanges, and all Josh Emmett needs to do is go in and land one of those bombs. And if he sits down Dan Ige on his ass, that impact of those punches are going to win him rounds as well. So it'd be very interesting. More questions more so about how Josh Emmett is competing or what level he is at after the long layoff. Dan Ige is coming in here with a point to prove as well. This will be his second fight of this year. No, this will be his third fight of this year. So he's been very active this year as well. So, maybe his durability is not going to be where it needs to be, especially fighting a guy like Josh Emmett. But I mean, this fight could go either way. I think if we had two guys that had been competing on a regular basis, I think I would probably easier lean towards maybe Josh Emmett. That's just down to his power factor and his one punch knockout power. His long layoff has me asking a couple of more questions, but it's definitely a fight that I'm looking forward to seeing, and it's a cracking fight to headline the prelims.
I agree, and just to close that point out, like Dan Ige only loses to the best, right? Julio Arce has had a fantastic career over in Bellator. Calvin Kattar, as we know, is just that cut under elite. And Chang Sung Jung, again, it's just that cut under elite, right? Everyone else, like Gavin Tucker, I'm a massive Gavin Tucker fan. And look what Dan Ige did to him. You know?
A very good fighter is Gavin Tucker as well. He hasn't had it all his own way in the UFC, but he is a very, very talented fighter as well. And you're not going to pick up an easy win against someone like him either. But that'll bring us on down to the bantamweight division once more, as a former bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz steps in there to fight Pedro Munoz in a 135-pound division. I like this fight. It's the perfect matchup.
Hail Dominic Cruz.
Two veterans of the game. These are the type of fights I want to see Dominic Cruz in, and at this stage of his career. I think we'd be lying to ourselves and lying to everybody else if we felt that Dominic Cruz has enough in him to put another title run in. I just simply don't think that he does, but I definitely do think he has enough ability to get the win in this fight and to probably pick up another couple of wins as well along the way. But I could see some trouble for him in the upper echelons of the division, but he has to get through Pedro Munoz first, which is no mean feat either. Munoz has been looking good recently. He was unlucky in his last fight against Jose Aldo, lost a unanimous decision, which, that's all right. You're fighting Jose Aldo. Before that was a good win earlier this year against Jimmy Rivera, who's a decent fight. Yeah, that was a very close fight as well. It could have went either way. He has a tough test in Dominic Cruz. How do you think this fight might go, Harry? I mean, would you give the advantage to Dominic Cruz here? Maybe, even at the later stage of his career, he's not as quick, maybe not as nimble as he once was, but I would still see him having the speed advantage coming in here in this fight over Pedro Munoz.
So, my thoughts are, we saw some of the old Dom Cruz against Casey Kenny, right? We saw flashes of the old Dom Cruz, some duck unders, some really, really interesting grappling entrances, some really, really nice exchanges, some of the old beautiful footwork. And I heard, I think it was Dom Cruz's coach in an embedded said to him, "Nobody fights like you fight." Yeah. And that's absolutely bang on, right? Pedro Munoz, you can find a Pedro Munoz. One of your guys in the gym can emulate a Pedro Munoz. Nobody emulates a Dom Cruz, right? So I think this is, again, like we said, that Casey Kenny fight was, the start of the year. Let's see where Dom Cruz is. He's 36 years old now. We know he's had so many problems with the plantar fasciitis. Who knows when that's going to flare up? Like, I completely agree with you that I never want to see Dom Cruz in a title fight again. I never want to see Dom Cruz fighting top 3, top 5 guys again, because he's just not that fighter anymore. And Dom Cruz is one of my favorite fighters of all time, right? But I don't want to see that. I don't think he has the gas that Jose Aldo has. Pedro Munoz is similar. They're both on declines in their career. I feel like Dom Cruz has to have the edge here, just for the versatility in his game and sort of the awkward style that he has. I think it's very hard to make reads on Dom Cruz, and if Dom Cruz starts to get into his rhythm, it's almost impossible to hit him clean. Whereas Pedro Munoz in this sort of time of his career, like a Jose Aldo, will stand in front of you pretty much, right? He'll stand in front of you and just land harder shots.
We've seen that in his last fight as well.
We did. Jimmy Rivera is a similar fighter. He's very lateral. He's not going to move side to side. He's backwards and forwards. He stands in front of you. Dom Cruz is the epitome of everything other than that, right? So I think if Dom Cruz is anywhere near his old self, he'll storm this with a 3-round decision. If he's not, and it's a close fight, I think Dom Cruz really needs to take a look at what he's fighting for. You know?
Absolutely. And that was a question I was going to ask you for. Like we said, we don't feel that he's going to make it to a title shot, or maybe even make it into the top 5. Like, how far do you think that Dominic Cruz himself thinks he can go? Do you think that he truly believes he can get back to the title again?
Yep, that's what he said in his pre-fight interviews. His pre-fight interviews, as he takes Pedro Munoz, he was like, he's just fought Jose Aldo, so he beats Pedro Munoz. He then fights a top 5 fighter. He then fights for the belt. That's his opinion. I don't want to see that.
Yeah, nor do I. And I said the same about Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo has gone out there and proved us all wrong. And what we think how Aldo would get on against the likes of Peter Yan or TJ Dillashaw or whatnot, he's at least proved to us at this stage that he's
still elite.
He's still elite, and he still deserves that shot. He at least deserves the shot. We haven't really seen that so much from Dominic Cruz lately. This is a good fight for him. It's a well-matched fight for him, and I'll be super interested to see how he handles it. I do fancy him to get the win as well. Manner of the win, I'm not so sure. Like me, if he goes out there and finishes someone like Munoz, that'll be ultra impressive, and that'll get us talking about him again, maybe. But he has to do that first, and it's easier said than done. But that is a great fight to have on the undercard. It's crazy to see Dominic Cruz fighting so low down in the card. As we move along, there's not too much more to talk about all that much on the main event. I do want to ask your opinion on your guy Ryan Hall, who comes in against.
Thank you. Yes.
I was not going to finish this preview without asking you about Ryan Hall. He's coming back in there. It's in Ryan Hall standards, he's coming back in here for a quick turnaround. He went from Darren Elkins' win to fighting Ilia Topuria at the start or the midweight point of this year in July, and he's back in there. That was we nearly had to wait 2 years to see him fight that time. We're only having to wait 5 months this time to see him getting back in there. I thought the Ilia Topuria matchup was absolutely horrible matchup for him. Thought he had no chance of winning it. I was shouting it from the rooftops before that fight happened, and Ilia Topuria just came in and with some serious ferocity there. He's Hall coming in against Derek Minner here now in this fight. A lot better matchup for him. Minner got on. He actually did quite well against Darren Elkins in the first round, but just Darren Elkins did what Darren Elkins does and just went into zombie mode and got the win in the end. How do you see Ryan Hall approaching this fight, and how do you see it going down overall?
I mean, Ryan Hall's not going to change his style, right? Like Ryan Hall sees MMA as an experiment, right? This is well documented in his conversations. He wants to see how he can translate jiu-jitsu and grappling into MMA, into a more real fighting experiment, is what he calls it, right? Now, we saw that Ilia Topuria, even before he fought Ryan Hall, is on a one-way track to the top of that division. He may not win a title, but he's absolutely going to be in and around that top 15 very, very quickly and for a large portion of his career. And I think if you're just trying to hit Granby rolls and Imanari rolls and pulling guard against those guys, you're going to get found out. And he did, right?
Yeah.
Derek
It's
Minner,
a dangerous
however,
experiment, I think, if you're going to be
dangerous.
going in like that. Like, I mean, we're long gone past shooting in with Imanari rolls now at this stage at the level of MMA that we're looking at week in, week out. So I'm very interested to see if Ryan Hall brings something else to the table here, because I really, his entries need to be a little different. And, it's not as if that he doesn't have them. He most certainly does have those entries into kind of initiating a takedown. But, I'd really like to see Ryan Hall come in here with something different. I mean, it's not going to look good if he comes in and tries the same old shit again and ends up getting beat again, or even if he tries the same old shit again and goes on to win a boring decision. It's not what anybody wants to see. Like, how do you see the fight itself playing out?
So I'm very interested, and I'm kind of torn. Derek Minner is a jiu-jitsu guy, right? Like, he's a grappler, he's a submission hunter. So if I'm Derek Minner, do I try to go out and submit Ryan Hall, right? Because if you go out there and you do submit Ryan Hall, that is the biggest feather in your MMA career, right? The biggest feather. We saw against TJ Laramie, right? TJ Laramie runs into Derek Minner and runs into the guillotine and that man has a serious guillotine. Now, I'm not expecting anything crazy like that to happen with Ryan Hall, right? I'd be very, very surprised if Ryan Hall ran into a guillotine. But I wonder whether Darren Minner, because Ryan will probably pull guard, right? We'd be happy to pull guard. Essentially pull guard, right? He might like literally just sit, but he might, he'd be happy to pull guard. I wonder whether Derek Minner is going to go and try and play jiu-jitsu with him. Because if he is, I think Ryan Hall smokes him.
Yeah, I do. And I think that'd be stupid if Derek
agree.
Minner came in there and started to do that early. But what Minner could do in this fight is he could go out there and maybe play around on the feet a little bit and maybe land those shots and try and wear down on Ryan Hall a little bit. And then maybe when he feels Ryan Hall getting a little bit more diminished or tired, or if he feels less strong in the clinch, then maybe in the later stages of the fight, he might have a chance to go in there and try and get the submission. But I think, if you're going in there to try and grapple with a guy like Ryan Hall, I think you're playing with fire, to be honest.
I agree. And I think the other thing that we should note here is experience, right? Okay, Derek Minner's career has been up and down, right? It's very loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. But he's had 38 fights in his career.
Very experienced, which is
very experienced. Important. This is Ryan Hall's 11th fight. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. He has competed in hundreds, if not thousands, of grappling matches in his career, but it's not the same, right? It's really not the same. And, Ryan will understand that he's a very cerebral guy, a very, very intelligent man. But if I'm Derek Minner, I'm going to try and lean on that experience as much as possible to try and keep this fight where I'm safe and try and keep this fight in a position where I can land shots, even if I am taken down, even if I do get dragged into a grappling exchange. But I'm picking Ryan Hall because he's my guy.
Of course. Just before, and I see Thomas Delaney popped in there with a question. We'll get to that right away. We'll go back to the main event before we wrap it up and answer that question. But I just want to ask you first, Harry, is there anything else on the undercard or on the early prelims cards that stands out to you? Anything that you'd like to talk about?
So I'll just rattle through. I really like Randy Costa. I think he is a really, really interesting prospect. And I think Tony Kelly is an equally interesting prospect. I think that's a fantastic matchup. I can't see it going all 3 rounds, but I do think that's a fun one. And then Ariane Blanchard versus Miranda Maverick is a really, really interesting fight. I think that's Miranda Maverick is seemingly the big hot prospect in that division. So Ariane Blanchard is are you the big hot prospect or is it Miranda Maverick? I think if we see Miranda Maverick come through this, it's 1 or 2 fights and then it's where she's going to get thrown to the wolves, right?
Yeah, I think and it was kind of a prospect versus prospect in Maverick's last fight too, when she fought Macy Barber, and that was a really, really close fight, and she could have came away with the win on another night that night as well. It was a close split decision, I think, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a great, great fight between 2 up-and-coming prospects on the undercard as well. And just before we wrap it up here, let's chat. We'll wrap it up and we'll go a little bit back to the main event. We'll answer Thomas's question here. Does Charlie Olives have a chance to submit Dustin? Most submissions in UFC have been well overlooked. To simply answer the question, I think yes, he does have a chance.
100% he does.
Chance, and I think that chance has to be early on in the fight. I think as the fight goes on, I think that chances diminishes a little bit. And as we were talking, and Sean was on with us earlier on as well, we were talking about where that opportunity is going to come. And yeah, to me, it's going to come probably early in the fight if it comes at all. But it's all going to be down to who's winning that foot battle on the feet and where the fight goes and which fighter can push the other fighter up against the fence and work for those scrambles. Because I don't think it's going to be just a clean takedown or a clean move into a guillotine or any kind of rear naked choke. I think Charlie Olives' best chance of snatching a submission is maybe getting into a clinch or getting into a takedown and creating scramble situations where maybe Pourier might leave his neck out there like he did against Khabib. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe if you wanted to share your thoughts on that as well, Harry.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really, really, really well. I mean, my only comparison will be the Tony Ferguson fight, right? Tony was there and able to be double-legged, and Charlie Olives double-legged him. If, for whatever reason, we see something similar, then Charlie Olives' guard passing is fantastic, and we may well see something similar. But Poirier fights are never clean cut. Even in the Khabib match, there were scrambles. He nearly had the guillotine. He defended the takedown relatively well. He was doing okay on the feet. Like, it's never just a clean cut one-way traffic. You never see, other than the McGregor fight, you never see Poirier just get run over. You just don't see it, right? No. And I really can't see it being any different in the Charlie Olives fight. If Charlie Olives comes out and 16-wheel truck runs over Dustin Poirier, we have a megastar on our hands.
Absolutely.
An absolute megastar. But I just can't see it. Either so to answer the question specifically, like, yeah, if Poirier gets clipped in an exchange, gets dropped, and Charlie Olives lands on top, we could absolutely see a submission. If, he gets dropped, falls into Charlie Olives into a guillotine, we can absolutely see that. If Charlie Olives is winning the footwork battle and pushing Poirier up against the fence, he's absolutely playing with fire. You don't want to be there against Charlie Olives. But other than that, I think, yeah, as you say, the later that the fight goes on, the sweatier that these guys get, it's going to be harder and harder and harder and harder to snatch up those submissions. But with a guy like Charles Oliveira, that submission is never, ever out of the question. But yeah, he can absolutely submit to
You have to be very careful too, even when you're going for submissions early, because you have to remember this is a 5-round fight. And on to snatch Dustin Poirier's neck early on in the fight when you don't really have a choke on and burn out your arms where you can't defend yourself in the championship rounds. That's a possibility of it happening too. I really and truly believe that this fight comes down to heart and tenacity, and if it goes into the championship rounds, that this is probably going to be Dustin Poirier's fight. I think that he might need to weather an early storm. I think that Charlie Olives can get hurt. I think he got hurt against Mike Chandler and Mike Chandler let him off. I think that if he gets hurt against Dustin Poirier on the feet, that Dustin Poirier is not going to let him get out of this fight. Dustin Poirier has some great killer instinct and he has some great finishing ability. And I think that if he clips Charlie Olives once in this fight and hurts him or even wobbles him, I think that Poirier is going to turn it on. And I can't remember what my official prediction was. Maybe it was a Poirier in round 3 or something like that. But that's the way I can see this fight going. But that being said, I think this is a phenomenal fight, and I'm really excited to see what goes on in this fight.
I absolutely agree. And just to bolt onto that point and just reinforce it a little bit, like there was a fella on Cage Warriors this evening, and his name's Luke Riley, and he was 1-0 before that fight, and he weathered a little bit of an early storm, right? And then he hurt his man a few times, but not once did he just wade on in there and just try and put him away. He picked his shots. He was patient. He picked his shots, and he finished his man. And I think the big difference, we mentioned at the very start of this is a nice way to round it off. We mentioned that Mike Chandler's fight IQ is useless, right? Well, we saw in that first round, if Mike Chandler hurts you, he's going to try and throw hell for leather to try and put you away. We saw it in the Gaethje fight. He hurt Gaethje. He threw the kitchen sink at Gaethje, and Gaethje's just so insanely good in those situations.
Which ultimately cost him the fight as well, because he ran out of steam in round 3 as well.
Absolutely. Whereas Dustin Poirier is a man that will note that you're hurt and just keep picking away.
That's it. And getting in there, Dustin Poirier is a confidence-based fighter as well, and I don't think that he's probably ever been as confident in his career to date. So all roads are leading towards Dustin Poirier taking the title. Charlie Olives will have his say. He's not going to go out without a fight. The champ is going to put it on Poirier for sure early on, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And that kind of just wraps us up, Harry. I appreciate you staying up so late to kind of help me along here in the preview.
Pleasure as always, sir.
It's a pleasure as always for me as well to sit down and have a chat with you. Thanks for everyone who's listened and watched and asked questions. This will be the last pre-show of the year. We won't be around for next UFC. I'll be traveling back to the motherland, so we won't be doing it. But we'll be back with a bang next year. We'll be back full of energy after the Christmas break. Thanks to everybody for the support and for watching, and for myself, for Harry, and for Severe MMA. Like, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow Harry at BJJ_Harry Powell. I got that wrong multiple times before. You never corrected me, so you should always correct me if I get it wrong.
Nailed it.
Go over and follow that man. You've just wrapped up a couple of Cage Warriors previews as well. It'll be over on SureDog.com and SevereMMA.com. Check them out.
Mama, we made it.
We did it. Red panty night in the Powell household. Before we head off, I want to remind you about our great sponsors, and that's Eat All Real Nutrition bars. The best protein bars on the market, Irish made. Our good friend Niall Harty runs a good company there, very environmentally friendly, doing some great stuff. Head all over there to eatallreal.com. Enter the code word Severe MMA. Get yourself 15% off. Wide range of flavors, chocolate, this, that. The guys on the Twitter group, they won't stop going on about it. They love it. I can't wait to go home and order some myself. I'm dying to try them out. Head over there, eatallreal.com. Code word Severe MMA. Get yourself 15% off. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for watching. Enjoy the fights tomorrow night. And happy Christmas and happy New Year.
Merry fucking Christmas, lads.
Merry Christmas. Take it easy. Ciao. Good luck. And thank you.